The trading post at Columbia, California, smelled of pine sap and desperation on that scorching afternoon in July of 1872. And Eleanor Harper knew her life was about to change in the worst possible way when she saw her stepfather shaking hands with a wagon merchant over what appeared to be her future. The gold rush had long since faded from these hills, leaving behind broken dreams and broken men. Eleanor's stepfather, Marcus Brennan, was both. He had dragged her mother west from Missouri 5 years ago with promises of wealth and prosperity. But the only thing he had found in abundance was whiskey and gambling debts. Her mother had died 2 winters past from pneumonia, leaving Eleanor at the mercy of a man who saw her as nothing more than property to be bartered. "Girl, get over here," Marcus called out, his voice rough with alcohol even at midday. Eleanor stood frozen near the rough-hewn counter, where she had been examining a bolt of calico fabric, the only bright thing in the dusty establishment. She was 21 years old, with dark auburn hair that caught the light streaming through the grimy windows and eyes the color of creek water after rain. Her dress was plain brown homespun, patched at the elbows, but she carried herself with a dignity that no amount of poverty could strip away. She approached slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. The wagon merchant was a corpulent man with yellowed teeth and hands that looked like they had never done an honest day's work. He looked her up and down as though she were a horse he was considering for purchase, and her stomach turned. "This here's Eleanor," Marcus said, not meeting her eyes. "She is strong, can cook, clean, and so. Worth more than that wagon you are trying to sell me, but I am in a generous mood." "You cannot do this," Eleanor whispered, her voice barely audible. "You cannot trade me like livestock." "I can do whatever I please," Marcus snapped, finally looking at her with bloodshot eyes. "You have been eating my food and sleeping under my roof for 2 years since your mama died. Time you earned your keep. Mr. Pemberton here needs a wife, and I need that wagon to get my goods to the mining camps." "I need someone to cook and tend house," Pemberton corrected with a leer that made Eleanor want to run. "Wife comes later if she proves satisfactory." The door to the trading post swung open with enough force to rattle the hinges, and sunlight flooded in along with a tall figure that seemed to fill the entire doorframe. Eleanor's eyes adjusted to see a man in his mid-20s, broad-shouldered and lean in the way of someone who spent their life working hard. He wore dusty trail clothes, a worn leather vest over a blue cotton shirt, and a hat that had seen better days. His face was sun-bronzed and angular, with dark hair that touched his collar and eyes the color of smoke. "Afternoon," he said, his voice a low drawl that carried an edge of authority. He removed his hat, revealing more of a face that was handsome in a rugged, unpolished way. "I am looking for supplies. Heard this was the place." The trading post owner, a nervous man named Jenkins, practically leaped from behind his counter. "Mr. Turner, yes, sir. We have got everything you might need. Your ranch doing well enough," the newcomer, Mr. Turner, replied. His eyes swept the room and landed on the scene before him, on Eleanor standing rigid while Pemberton continued to examine her like merchandise. Something shifted in his expression, a hardening around his mouth. "What is going on here?" "Private business transaction," Marcus said quickly. "Nothing that concerns you." "Seems to concern that young lady quite a bit," Turner observed, moving further into the room. Now Eleanor could see he was perhaps 27 or 28, with the kind of weathered competence that came from years of ranching in unforgiving country. "She looks mighty unhappy about it." "The girl is mine to do with as I please," Marcus blustered. "Her mother was my wife." "Was," Turner repeated, catching the past tense. "So she is not your daughter and her mother is gone, which makes her a free woman as I understand the law." Alina felt a spark of hope flare in her chest. She had thought the same thing many times during the 2 years since her mother's death, but she had nowhere to go, no money, no prospects. Marcus had made it clear that if she left his protection, she would end up in far worse circumstances. The mining towns were full of women who had run out of options. "She owes me," Marcus insisted. 2 years of room and board. Did she agree to those terms? Turner asked, his voice dangerously quiet. He moved closer, and Alina noticed he wore a pistol on his hip, well maintained and positioned for a quick draw. "Did she sign anything? Or did you just assume you could sell her off when it suited you?" "Now you listen here," Pemberton interjected, puffing up his considerable chest. "We had a deal. I am trading a perfectly good wagon for the girl, and I do not appreciate some ranch hand interfering." "Ranch owner," Turner corrected mildly. "Ryder Turner. I own the Double T spread about 10 miles north of here, and I am not interfering, I am preventing a crime." "You cannot buy and sell people, not anymore. There was a war fought over that particular issue, in case you missed it." Alina found her voice, though it shook. "I did not agree to anything. I do not want to go with Mr. Pemberton. I have been trying to save money to leave, to go to San Francisco or Sacramento, somewhere I can find proper work, but Marcus takes everything I earn from sewing and laundry." "There, you see," Ryder Turner turned to Jenkins. "Witness that. The lady does not consent. Marcus Brennan, if you force this transaction, I will ride to the sheriff in Sonora and have you arrested for attempted kidnapping and slave trading." "This is ridiculous," Marcus sputtered, but Alina could see the fear creeping into his eyes. The law in California was unpredictable, but it did not look kindly on anything that resembled the buying and selling of human beings. "Fine, she can go, but she is not taking anything with her. Everything she has got I paid for." "Actually, I did not come here for supplies," Ryder said, a plan clearly forming behind his gray eyes. "I came to town looking to hire someone. My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, she is getting older and needs help with the cooking and cleaning. I have got 15 ranch hands to feed, and the work is getting to be too much for one woman. The position pays $30 a month plus room and board." Alina's breath caught. $30 a month was more money than she had ever dreamed of having. It was freedom, real freedom. "What is the catch?" she asked, because in her experience, offers that sounded too good to be true usually were. Ryder Turner met her eyes directly, and she saw nothing but honesty there. "No catch. You would have your own room in the main house. Mrs. Chen has been with me for 5 years since I started the ranch, and she will be there too. You would work hard. I will not lie about that, but you would be paid fair, and you could leave whenever you wanted. I would even advance you the first month's wages right now if you need traveling money." "She will just run off with it," Pemberton said sourly. "Then that is her choice," Ryder replied. "Free people get to make choices, even bad ones." He turned back to Alina. "What do you say, Miss Harper, Alina Harper?" She straightened her shoulders. "I say yes. Thank you, Mr. Turner. I will work hard for you. You will not regret it. I believe you." He pulled a small leather pouch from his vest and counted out coins onto the trading post counter. $30. Jenkins is your witness. Miss Harper is now employed by the Double T Ranch. Marcus, I assume you have got no legal objection." Marcus looked like he wanted to object very much, but the presence of witnesses and the threat of the sheriff kept him silent. He turned and stormed out of the trading post, Pemberton following with a string of muttered curses. Alina watched them go, hardly believing what had just happened. "You have things you need to collect?" Ryder asked her once they were gone. "Not much. I have got a carpetbag at the boarding house where Marcus rents a room, my mother's Bible, some clothes, my sewing kit." Nothing he actually paid for. Everything was mine or my mother's from before. Let us go get it then. My wagon is outside and we should get back to the ranch before dark. It is a 2-hour drive. Alina followed him out into the bright sunshine, her legs feeling strangely unsteady. Everything had changed in the span of minutes. She had gone from being traded like an object to being a free woman with employment and prospects. It felt unreal. Ryder's wagon was sturdy and well-maintained, pulled by 2 good horses. He helped her up onto the bench seat with a calloused hand that was surprisingly gentle. They drove to the boarding house in silence, and Alina was grateful he did not press her with questions or small talk. She needed time to process what had happened. Marcus was not at the boarding house, which was a relief. Alina gathered her few possessions quickly, everything fitting into one battered carpetbag. The landlady, a severe woman named Mrs. Potts, watched with narrowed eyes but said nothing. Everyone in Columbia knew Marcus Brennan was trouble, and no one would be sorry to see Alina escape his clutches. "Ready?" Ryder asked when she emerged. "More than ready." They headed north out of Columbia, the road climbing into the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. The landscape was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way, all golden grass and dark pines and granite outcroppings. The summer heat pressed down like a physical weight, but a faint breeze carried the scent of pine and dust. "Thank you," Alina said after they had been traveling for a while. "You did not have to do what you did back there." "Yes, I did," Ryder replied, his eyes on the road. "I could not stand by and watch a man sell a woman like she was a piece of furniture. My mother raised me better than that, God rest her soul. Is she? Died when I was 18, fever. My father had already passed, killed in the war. I was their only child, so the ranch in Texas went to me. But I wanted to start fresh, make something of my own, so I sold it and came west. Been building the Double T for 5 years now. You are from Texas originally then?" "Yes, madam." "Little town called Fredericksburg. Lots of German settlers there. My father was a Texas Ranger before the war." He glanced at her. "What about you? You are not from California originally, I can tell. Missouri. A little town called Liberty outside of Kansas City." "My father died when I was 16, cholera. My mother remarried a year later. Marcus seemed like a decent man at first, or maybe she just wanted to believe he was because she was scared of being alone. Either way, he convinced her to come west. She died in 70, and I have been stuck with him ever since." "Not stuck anymore," Ryder said firmly. They fell into companionable silence again. Alina studied him from the corner of her eye, taking in the strong line of his jaw, the capable way he handled the reins, the easy confidence in his posture. He was handsome. She could not deny that, but more than that, he seemed solid, dependable. He had stepped in to help a stranger with nothing to gain for himself, and that spoke volumes about his character. The ranch appeared as they crested a rise, sprawling across a valley with a creek running through it. The main house was 2 stories, built from timber and stone with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. There were several outbuildings, a large barn, corrals, and in the distance, she could see cattle grazing on the hillsides. It was more prosperous than she had expected, a real working ranch, not some hardscrabble operation barely hanging on. "It is beautiful," she said honestly. "Thank you. It has been a lot of work, but it is starting to pay off. We have got about 200 head of cattle now, and I am hoping to double that by next year." He drove the wagon up to the main house and set the brake. "Come on, I will introduce you to Mrs. Chen." The interior of the house was clean and well kept, with simple but sturdy furniture and whitewashed walls. It was cooler than outside, thanks to the thick walls and strategically placed windows. A woman emerged from what Alina assumed was the kitchen, small and wiry with iron-gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her face was lined with age and hard work, but her eyes were sharp and kind. "Mrs. Chen, this is Alina Harper. She's going to be helping you with the cooking and housework." "Alina, this is Mrs. Chen. She keeps this place running." Mrs. Chen looked Alina up and down, but unlike Pemberton's leer, this was an assessing look, measuring competence rather than exploitation. "You know how to cook for 20 people. I can learn," Alina said. "I am a fast learner and I am not afraid of hard work." "Good. Can you make bread?" "Yes, madam. My mother taught me. I can make biscuits, cornbread, sourdough, whatever you need." Mrs. Chen nodded, apparently satisfied. "You come with me. I will show you your room and the kitchen." "Mr. Turner, the men will be wanting supper in 3 hours." "Yes, madam," Ryder said with a slight smile. It was clear who really ran the household. "I will let you two get acquainted. Alina, if you need anything, just let me know." Mrs. Chen led Alina upstairs to a small but clean room with a real bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the valley. "You have got your own room. Door has a lock. Mr. Turner, he is a good man, runs a decent place. No drinking, no gambling, no rough behavior. Any of the ranch hands gives you trouble, you tell me or Mr. Turner, and they will be gone that same day. Understand?" "Yes, madam. Thank you." Alina set her carpetbag on the bed, still hardly believing this was real. Her own room with a lock. It seemed like a luxury beyond measure. "Change into work clothes if you have got them, then come down to the kitchen. I will teach you what needs doing." Alina had one other dress, slightly less worn than the one she was wearing. She changed quickly and splashed water on her face from the basin, then headed downstairs. The kitchen was large and well-equipped, with a massive cast iron stove, a long work table, and shelves lined with supplies. Mrs. Chen was already at work, kneading dough with practiced efficiency. "You make the biscuits," Mrs. Chen instructed. "There is flour, lard, buttermilk. You know the rest. I will finish this bread and start on the stew." They worked in harmony, and Alina found herself relaxing into the familiar rhythms of cooking. It felt good to work toward something constructive, something that would feed people rather than simply trying to avoid Marcus's temper or his attempts to sell her off. The kitchen grew warm from the stove, and the smell of baking bread filled the air. The ranch hands began filing in just as the sun was starting to lower in the sky. They were a rough-looking bunch, dusty from a day's work, but they wiped their boots before entering and removed their hats respectfully. They eyed Alina with curiosity, but nothing inappropriate, taking their seats at the long table in the dining room. Ryder was the last to arrive, having cleaned up and changed into a fresh shirt. He took his place at the head of the table and waited until everyone was seated before speaking. "Men, this is Alina Harper. She is Mrs. Chen's new assistant. I expect you all to treat her with the same respect you show Mrs. Chen. Anyone who does not can collect their pay and move on." "Clear," a chorus of "Yes, sir," went around the table. Supper was a loud, cheerful affair, with the men talking about the day's work, joking with each other, planning for tomorrow. Alina and Mrs. Chen served stew, fresh bread, biscuits, and dried apple pie, and the men ate with the appetite of those who had worked hard all day. Alina found herself smiling at their banter, the easy camaraderie between them. It was so different from the tense, silent meals she had endured with Marcus. After supper, the men dispersed to the bunkhouse or to evening chores. Alina and Mrs. Chen cleaned up the kitchen, washing dishes and preparing tomorrow's breakfast dough. By the time they finished, Alina was exhausted, but it was a good kind of tired, the satisfaction of work well done. "You did good today," Mrs. Chen said as they hung up the drying towels. "You will fit in here just fine." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen, for being kind to me." The older woman's expression softened. "We all need help sometimes, girl. You are safe here. Remember that." Alina went up to her room, locked the door out of habit, and sat on the bed. She pulled out her mother's Bible, the only thing of real value she owned, and opened it to the front page where her mother had written the family names. Sarah Ann Harper, born 1825, died 1870. Alina Rose Harper, born 1851. Her father's name was there too, James Harper, a good man who had worked as a carpenter and had loved his family. She touched the faded ink, feeling tears prick her eyes. "I am safe now, Mama," she whispered to the empty room. "Someone finally helped me." That night, she slept more soundly than she had in 2 years. The next weeks fell into a pattern. Alina rose before dawn to help Mrs. Chen prepare breakfast for the ranch hands, then spent the day cooking, cleaning, doing laundry, mending clothes, and tending the kitchen garden. The work was hard but satisfying, and true to his word, Ryder paid her at the end of the first month, counting $30 silver into her hand. "You have earned every penny," he said. "Mrs. Chen says you are the best help she has ever had." Alina felt her cheeks warm at the praise. "I am just doing my job. You are doing more than that. The men have noticed too. Food has been even better than usual, the house is spotless, and you have got half of them convinced you are some kind of saint for fixing their torn shirts and worn socks." She laughed at that. "Hardly a saint, Mr. Turner, just someone who is grateful for the opportunity." He studied her for a moment, his gray eyes thoughtful. "You know, you can call me Ryder. Mr. Turner makes me feel like my father. Only if you call me Alina instead of Miss Harper. Deal?" He smiled, and Alina felt something flutter in her chest, something she had not felt before. She pushed it away, not wanting to complicate the first stable situation she had found in years. But as more time passed, it became harder to ignore the growing attraction she felt toward Ryder Turner. He was everything Marcus was not: hardworking, honest, kind, fair. He treated his ranch hands with respect, paid them well, and never asked them to do anything he would not do himself. She saw him up before dawn, working alongside his men, fixing fences, herding cattle, breaking horses. He was in the barn helping with a difficult calving at midnight, and back in the saddle at sunrise. And he was unfailingly courteous to her and Mrs. Chen, always thanking them for meals, asking if they needed anything from town, making sure they had help with heavy work. Alina found herself looking forward to the moments when their paths crossed during the day, the brief conversations over morning coffee or evening accounts. She was not the only one noticing the attraction. Mrs. Chen, with her sharp eyes, saw everything. "That man is sweet on you," she said one afternoon when they were peeling apples for drying. "Who?" Alina asked, though she knew perfectly well. "Do not play dumb with me, girl. Mr. Turner. He looks at you like you are water and he has been crossing the desert." Alina felt her face heat. "He is just being kind. He is my employer, nothing more." "Hum," Mrs. Chen said, clearly not believing a word. "And you are not sweet on him at all, I suppose?" Alina opened her mouth to deny it, but found she could not lie to the woman who had become like family to her. "Even if I was, it would not matter. He is a successful rancher, and I am just a woman with nothing to her name but a carpetbag and $30. Besides, after what almost happened with Pemberton, I am not eager to put myself in any man's power again. Mr. Turner is not like other men, Mrs. Chen said firmly. "And you are worth more than you know, Alina Harper. Do not let that stepfather of yours steal that from you too." Summer faded into fall, and the ranch work shifted with the seasons. The cattle were moved to lower pastures, hay was cut and stored, and preparations began for winter. Alina had saved every penny of her wages, storing them carefully in a tin box under her bed. She had nearly $100 now, enough to start fresh somewhere if she wanted. But she found she did not want to leave. The ranch felt like home in a way nowhere had since her father died. She loved the rhythm of the days, the satisfaction of work well done, the beauty of the valley as the aspens turned gold against the dark pines. She loved Mrs. Chen's gruff kindness and the ranch hand's respectful camaraderie. And if she was honest with herself, she loved Ryder Turner. It was not something she had intended. She had promised herself she would never put her heart at risk, never give a man power over her again. But Ryder had slipped past her defenses without even trying. It was in the way he always made sure she and Mrs. Chen ate before he did, the way he brought her wildflowers from the high meadow because he thought they might brighten the kitchen. It was in the way he listened when she talked, really listened, and remembered things she mentioned in passing. It came to a head one October evening when a leaner was bringing in laundry from the line. The sun was setting in a blaze of orange and gold, and the air had that crisp quality that came with autumn in the mountains. She was folding sheets when Ryder appeared, having finished with the evening chores. "Need help?" he asked. "I've got it, but thank you." He leaned against the porch rail watching her work. "Eleanor, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy here?" She looked up, surprised. "Yes, very happy. Why do you ask?" "Because you have been here 4 months now and you have not taken a single day off. You have not gone to town, have not done anything for yourself. I want to make sure you know you are not a prisoner here. You are free to come and go as you please." Eleanor set down the sheet she was folding and met his eyes. "I know I am free. That is why I stay. This is the first place I have felt safe since my father died. You gave me that, Ryder. You gave me my freedom when you could have just walked away that day in the trading post. I have not forgotten that." "I did not do it expecting gratitude," he said softly. "I did it because it was right." "I know. That is what makes you different from most men I have known." He moved closer, and Eleanor's heart began to race. "Eleanor, I need to tell you something, and I need you to know you can be honest with me without worrying about your position here. Even if you do not feel the same, you will still have your job and your room for as long as you want them. I give you my word on that." "All right," she whispered, hardly daring to breathe. "I have feelings for you, strong feelings. Have had them almost since the day I met you, if I am being honest. You are strong and brave and kind, and you make me want to be a better man. I would like permission to court you properly if you are willing. But if you are not interested, I will respect that, and we will never speak of it again." Eleanor felt tears sting her eyes, but they were good tears this time, tears of joy and relief. "I have feelings for you too, Ryder. I have been trying to ignore them because I was afraid. After Marcus, after almost being sold to Pemberton, I swore I would never let a man have power over me again. But you are not like them. You have never tried to control me or diminish me. You have only ever built me up. Then you will let me court you." "Yes," she said, smiling through her tears. "Yes, I will." He reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb, his touch feather light and reverent. "Can I kiss you, Eleanor? I wish you would." He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to change her mind, and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was gentle and sweet and full of promise. Eleanor's hands came up to rest on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart under her palms. The kiss deepened, and she felt something inside her that had been locked tight since her mother's death finally begin to open. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless. Ryder rested his forehead against hers, his hands cradling her face. "I will spend every day proving you can trust me," he promised. "I will never make you regret choosing to stay." "I know," she whispered back. "I already know." They stood there as the sun set completely and the first stars appeared, holding each other in the gathering darkness. From the kitchen window, Mrs. Chen smiled and went back to her work. The courtship was slow and sweet and proper. Ryder would find excuses to be near Alina during the day, helping her hang laundry, carrying heavy pots, sitting with her on the porch in the evenings after supper. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Alina told him about her father's workshop, how she used to sit and watch him build beautiful furniture from rough lumber, the smell of sawdust and the sound of his patient voice. Ryder told her about growing up on a ranch in Texas, learning to ride before he could read, following his father on patrol when the rangers would allow it. He was a good man, Ryder said one evening as they sat watching the sunset. Stern sometimes, but fair. He died at Shiloh. Never even knew I existed, really, since I was conceived right before he left. My mother got the letter 6 months after I was born. I am sorry, Alina said, taking his hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally now, a gesture that had become second nature over the past weeks. My father died in my arms. The cholera came on so fast. One day he was fine, the next he was burning with fever, and 3 days later he was gone. I think my mother never really recovered. That is why she married Marcus so quickly. She was drowning in grief and he threw her a rope, even if it turned out to be a noose. You could have ended up bitter and hard after everything you have been through, Ryder observed. But you did not. You are still kind, still hopeful. That is a rare thing, Alina. I had a choice, she said simply. Let it destroy me or let it make me stronger. I chose strength. As October turned to November, the ranch prepared for winter. The cattle were brought down from the high country, supplies were laid in, and the bunkhouse was made ready for the cold months ahead. Alina helped Mrs. Chen preserve vegetables from the garden, smoke meat, and bake goods that would keep through the winter. One afternoon, Ryder asked Alina to take a ride with him. She had learned to ride over the past months, borrowing an old mare named Daisy who was gentle and patient with beginners. They rode out to a high meadow where the aspen trees stood like golden pillars against the blue sky, their leaves rustling in the wind like whispered secrets. Ryder dismounted and helped Alina down, then spread a blanket on the grass. They sat together, looking out over the valley, the ranch a miniature below them. This is where I want to build a house someday, Ryder said. Something bigger, something that could hold a family. The current house is fine for a bachelor rancher and his staff, but I have been thinking about the future lately. What kind of future? Alina asked, though her heart was already racing because she thought she knew. He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. A future with you if you will have me. Alina Harper, I know we have not been courting long, but I have never been more sure of anything in my life. You are the woman I have been waiting for, the woman I want to build a life with. Will you marry me? Alina felt tears spill down her cheeks, but she was smiling so wide her face hurt. Yes, she said. Yes, Ryder, I will marry you. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply while the golden leaves fell around them like blessings. When they finally pulled apart, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. It was my mother's, he said. The only thing I have left of hers. I would be honored if you would wear it. Alina held out her trembling left hand, and Ryder slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly as though it had been made for her. She looked at it through her tears, this symbol of promises made and futures planned. When? She asked. When do you want to get married? As soon as possible, he said with a grin, but I will wait as long as you need. I want to do this right, Alina. I want you to have the wedding you deserve. I do not need anything fancy, she said. I just need you. They decided on a Christmas wedding. It gave them time to make preparations and for Ryder to arrange for a circuit preacher to come to the ranch. Alina wrote letters to some of her mother's family back in Missouri, distant cousins she had not seen in years, though she doubted they would make the journey. Mrs. Chen took charge of the wedding preparations with the efficiency of a military general, planning a feast that would feed not only the ranch hands, but also neighboring ranchers and townspeople who would be invited. Word spread quickly in the small community. The story of how Ryder had rescued Alina from being traded for a wagon had become something of a local legend, and people were eager to celebrate their marriage. Gifts began arriving at the ranch: a quilt made by the women of Columbia, a set of dishes from the general store owner, a hand-carved mantel clock from a neighbor rancher. "People think well of you," Alina told Ryder one evening as they sorted through the gifts. "They respect what you did for me." "I respect what you did for yourself," he replied. "I just gave you an option. You are the one who had the courage to take it, to start over, to trust again. That is all you, Alina." As Christmas approached, the ranch was transformed. Mrs. Chen and Alina spent days baking fruit cakes, cookies, pies, bread. The house was decorated with pine boughs and red ribbons. A massive tree was cut and brought into the parlor, decorated with strings of popcorn and paper ornaments made by some of the ranch hands who turned out to have surprising artistic talent. Alina's wedding dress was made from cream-colored silk that Ryder had ordered from San Francisco at considerable expense. Mrs. Chen was a skilled seamstress, and together they created a simple but elegant gown with long sleeves and a high neck, appropriate for a winter wedding. Alina felt like a princess when she tried it on, so far removed from the desperate woman in a patched dress who had stood in that trading post 5 months ago. The night before the wedding, Alina lay in bed unable to sleep. Tomorrow, she would marry Ryder Turner. Tomorrow she would become his wife, and he would become her husband. It was everything she wanted, and yet she felt a flutter of nerves. What if she was not a good enough wife? What if she disappointed him? What if this happiness was too good to last? A soft knock at her door interrupted her worried thoughts. "Alina, are you awake?" It was Mrs. Chen. Alina opened the door to find the older woman holding 2 cups of warm milk with honey. "Could not sleep either?" Alina asked. "Old women do not need much sleep. And I wanted to talk to you before tomorrow." They sat on Alina's bed, sipping their milk like conspirators. Mrs. Chen was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "I was married once," she finally said. "Long time ago, back in China. Good man, kind man. We came to California during the gold rush. He died in a mining accident after 2 years. I was alone in a foreign country, did not speak the language well, had no family. I thought my life was over." Alina had never heard this story. Mrs. Chen rarely talked about her past. "But I survived," Mrs. Chen continued. "Found work, learned English, made a new life. Eventually I was not sad anymore, but I never married again, never found someone worth the risk." She looked at Alina with fierce intensity. "You found that someone. Mr. Turner, he is a good man, a rare man. He will treat you right. But Alina, you need to believe you deserve to be treated right. You need to stop thinking of yourself as the girl who was almost traded for a wagon and start thinking of yourself as the woman who refused to be traded, who chose her own path. That is who you really are." "I am trying," Alina whispered. "I know, and you are doing well. Tomorrow you marry a good man who loves you. Let yourself be happy. Stop waiting for something to go wrong." Alina hugged the older woman tight. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen, for everything, for being the family I needed." "Silly girl," Mrs. Chen said, but her voice was thick with emotion. "Now get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. Christmas dawned clear and cold, with frost sparkling on the grass and smoke rising straight up from the chimney in the still air. The circuit preacher, a jovial man named Reverend Thomas, had arrived the night before and slept in the guest room. Neighbors began arriving by mid-morning. Ranchers and their families, townspeople from Columbia, even the sheriff from Sonora who had heard the story and wanted to see it end well. Alina dressed in her wedding gown with Mrs. Chen's help, her hands shaking as she buttoned the tiny silk-covered buttons. Her hair was swept up and pinned, with a few curls left to frame her face. She wore her mother's garnet earrings, the only jewelry she owned besides her wedding ring already on her finger. "Beautiful," Mrs. Chen pronounced. "Mr. Turner is a lucky man." The ceremony was held in the parlor, which had been cleared of most furniture to make room for guests. Alina walked down the makeshift aisle on the arm of Thomas Wheeler, Ryder's foreman, a grizzled cowboy in his 50s who had become something of a protective uncle figure to her. But Alina only had eyes for Ryder, standing at the front of the room in a new suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his gray eyes locked on her with an expression of such love and reverence that it took her breath away. She had chosen this man, and he had chosen her. Not because of obligation or desperation or necessity, but because of love. Reverend Thomas led them through the traditional vows. When it came time for Ryder to speak, his voice was strong and clear. "I, Ryder James Turner, take you, Alina Rose Harper, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, protect you, and cherish you all the days of my life. You chose to stay when I gave you freedom, and that is a gift I will never take for granted." Alina's voice shook but did not falter. "I, Alina Rose Harper, take you, Ryder James Turner, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, honor you, support you, and stand beside you all the days of my life. You gave me freedom and showed me what real love looks like. I choose you today and every day. Then, by the power vested in me by the state of California and Almighty God, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Ryder cupped Alina's face in his hands and kissed her softly, sweetly, a promise of all the kisses to come. The room erupted in applause and cheers, and Alina laughed through her tears. The celebration that followed was joyous and boisterous. Tables had been set up in the barn, which had been cleaned and decorated for the occasion. There was more food than anyone could possibly eat. Roasted beef and ham, potatoes and vegetables, fresh bread, pies and cakes. Musicians appeared with a fiddle, a guitar, and a harmonica, and soon people were dancing. Ryder led Alina in the first dance, holding her close and whispering in her ear. "Happy, Mrs. Turner?" "Happier than I knew was possible, Mr. Turner." They danced until Alina's feet ached, and then they danced some more. The ranch hands, who had grown protective of Alina over the past months, made sure her cup was never empty, and that she got a chance to sit and rest between dances. The neighbor women welcomed her into their circle, already planning quilting bees and church socials. She was part of a community now, not just an outsider looking in. As evening fell and the celebration showed no signs of slowing, Ryder leaned down and whispered, "Want to escape?" Alina nodded, and they slipped away from the party, running hand in hand through the cold night air back to the main house. They had moved Alina's few belongings into Ryder's room that morning, combining their lives officially. Ryder picked her up and carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing breathlessly. He set her down gently in their room, and suddenly the laughter faded, replaced by something deeper and more intense. Ryder reached up and carefully began removing the pins from Alina's hair, letting the auburn curls fall around her shoulders. His hands were gentle but sure, and Alina felt her nervousness fade away. This was Ryder, her husband, the man who had given her freedom and then waited patiently for her to choose him. She trusted him completely. "I love you," she whispered as he pulled her close. "I love you too," he murmured against her hair. "My brave, beautiful wife." Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a discovery of each other that left them both breathless and amazed. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the big bed, Aliner's head on Ryder's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Tell me this is real," she said softly. "Tell me I am going to wake up and still be here." "It is real," he promised, his arms tightening around her. "You are my wife and I am your husband, and nothing is going to change that. You are home, Aliner, finally and forever." She fell asleep with a smile on her face, secure in the knowledge that she was loved and chosen and free. The first months of marriage were an adjustment, but a joyful one. Aliner learned the rhythms of being a wife, and Ryder learned the rhythms of being a husband. They discovered each other's quirks and habits. How Aliner liked to read by lamplight before bed, how Ryder always woke before dawn no matter what. They learned to work together, to compromise, to communicate. Mrs. Chen, with her usual efficiency, had stepped back from some of her duties, allowing Aliner to truly become the mistress of the house. It was not a demotion but a recognition that the household had changed, that there was a new partnership at its head. Mrs. Chen remained an invaluable advisor and friend, but she seemed content to let Aliner take the lead, stepping in only when asked. Winter gave way to spring, and the ranch came alive again. Calves were born, foals wobbled on uncertain legs, and the meadows turned green. Aliner worked in her garden, coaxing vegetables from the rich soil, and Ryder began planning the expansion he had talked about. They would need a bigger house if they were going to raise a family, and that was definitely part of their plans. One warm May morning, Aliner woke feeling queasy. She barely made it to the basin before losing her breakfast. Ryder was immediately concerned, hovering anxiously, but Aliner waved him off with a weak smile. "I am fine," she assured him. "Or rather, I will be fine in about 7 months." It took him a moment to understand, and then his face lit up with such pure joy that Aliner started crying, which made him panic, which made her laugh, and soon they were both laughing and crying and holding each other. "We are having a baby?" he asked, as though he needed confirmation. "We are having a baby," Aliner confirmed. "I am about 6 weeks along, I think. Mrs. Chen suspected before I did." "Of course she did," Ryder said, grinning. "That woman knows everything. Aliner, you have made me the happiest man alive." The pregnancy was relatively easy, though Aliner was tired and sick for the first few months. Ryder was attentive to the point of being overprotective, trying to convince her to rest more and work less. Aliner, stubborn and independent as always, insisted on maintaining most of her usual activities, though she did accept help with the heavier tasks. Mrs. Chen prepared special teas to help with the nausea and made sure Aliner ate properly. The ranch hands, upon learning the news, became even more protective, rushing to help with anything Aliner tried to do. Thomas Wheeler, the foreman, actually scolded her once for carrying a basket of laundry that he deemed too heavy. "You have got 15 grown men around here," he grumbled. "Let us be useful." As Aliner's belly grew, so did the house. Ryder hired carpenters from Columbia to add 3 new rooms, a proper nursery, a larger kitchen, and a guest room. He worked alongside them, determined to have everything ready before the baby arrived. In the evenings, he would sit with Aliner and discuss names, making lists and debating the merits of each option. "If it is a boy, I like the name Samuel," Aliner said one night as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "After my father. His middle name was Samuel." "Samuel Turner," Ryder tried out. "I like it. What about for a girl, Rose, maybe, after my middle name and my mother's favorite flower? Rose Turner, that is beautiful, though any daughter of ours would be beautiful no matter what we name her. The baby arrived on a cold December night, almost exactly a year after Alina and Ryder's wedding. The labor was long and difficult, with Alina gripping Ryder's hand so hard she left bruises. Mrs. Chen attended as midwife, calm and competent even when Alina was sure she could not go on. Almost there, Mrs. Chen encouraged. One more push. And then, with a final tremendous effort, the baby was born. A boy, red-faced and squalling, with a shock of dark hair and his father's gray eyes. Mrs. Chen cleaned him efficiently and handed him to Alina, who cradled him with shaking arms. "Samuel James Turner," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, little one, we have been waiting for you." Ryder was crying too, unashamed, looking at his wife and son with an expression of awe. "He is perfect," he said hoarsely. "You are perfect. Thank you, Alina. Thank you for this gift." Samuel was a good baby, healthy and strong. He had Alina's auburn hair and Ryder's gray eyes, and he seemed to inherit the stubbornness of both parents. The ranch hands doted on him, taking turns holding him and making ridiculous faces to earn his smiles. Mrs. Chen, who Alina had never seen be anything but practical and reserved, turned into a grandmother overnight, constantly checking on the baby and knitting endless tiny garments. Life settled into a new rhythm, busier and more chaotic than before, but filled with a contentment Alina had never known existed. She would watch Ryder with their son, seeing him rock Samuel to sleep or change diapers with the same competence he showed breaking horses, and feel her heart overflow with love. 2 years later, a daughter arrived, Rose Marie Turner, with her mother's green eyes and a temperament as sunny as a summer day. Samuel, now walking and talking, was fascinated by his baby sister, always wanting to help with her care. The house rang with children's laughter, and Alina sometimes had to stop and pinch herself to make sure it was all real. One afternoon in late spring, when Samuel was 5 and Rose was 3, Alina was working in her garden while the children played nearby. She heard the sound of a wagon approaching and looked up to see a familiar, unwelcome figure. Marcus Brennan, older and more worn than she remembered, was climbing down from a battered wagon. Alina's first instinct was fear, the old reflexive terror from her time under his control. But then she straightened her spine and remembered who she was now. She was not a desperate orphan anymore. She was Alina Turner, wife of a successful rancher, mother of 2 beautiful children, a woman of property and standing in the community. "Marcus," she said coolly, "what do you want?" He removed his hat, looking uncomfortable. "Alina, you look well, prosperous." "I am. What do you want?" she repeated. "I heard you married that rancher, had children. I have fallen on hard times, Alina, lost everything in a bad investment. I was hoping maybe you could help an old family member out for your mother's sake." "You are not family," Alina said flatly. "You were my mother's husband, and not a good one. You tried to sell me like livestock. Why would I help you?" "Because I gave you a roof over your head for 2 years, he whined. "Because I could have turned you out, but I did not." "You did not turn me out because you thought you could profit from me," Alina corrected. "And you tried. If it were not for my husband, I would have been sold to Pemberton, and who knows what would have become of me. No, Marcus, you get nothing from me." Samuel and Rose had stopped playing and were watching the exchange with worried eyes. Alina moved to stand between them and Marcus, a mother bear protecting her cubs. Ryder emerged from the barn, alerted by the raised voices. He took in the situation at a glance and moved to stand beside Alina, his presence solid and reassuring. "Is there a problem here?" "This is Marcus Brennan," Alina said. He was just leaving. I was asking for a little help, Marcus protested. Is that so wrong? After everything I did for her, everything you did for her, Ryder repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. You mean trying to trade her for a wagon? Or maybe you mean the 2 years you took her wages and gave her nothing in return. Or perhaps you mean the way you made her feel worthless and trapped. Tell me, which of those things do you think deserves a reward? Marcus's face reddened. She owes me. She owes you nothing, Ryder said flatly. Now get off my property before I have the sheriff arrest you for trespassing. And if you ever come near my wife or my children again, I will not bother with the sheriff. Do we understand each other? Something in Ryder's eyes must have convinced Marcus that he was serious. The older man backed toward his wagon, stumbling in his haste. This is not right, he muttered. Not Christian. You want to talk about what is Christian? Alina called after him, her voice ringing with righteous anger. It is not Christian to treat people like property. It is not Christian to steal from a grieving woman. You want charity. Go to a church. You will get nothing from me but the satisfaction of knowing I survived your cruelty and built a good life, despite your best efforts to destroy me. Marcus climbed into his wagon and drove away without another word. Alina watched him go, feeling a strange sense of closure. She had been afraid of him for so long, and now she saw him for what he truly was, a pathetic, bitter man who had tried to break her and failed. Ryder wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Are you all right? I am better than all right, Alina said, leaning into his warmth. I am free. Really, truly free. I am not that scared girl anymore, Ryder. I am not even angry at him. I just feel sorry for him. That is because you have a kind heart, Ryder said, kissing the top of her head. But he is right about one thing. You are prosperous, not because of him, but in spite of him. You built this life, Alina, you and me together. Samuel tugged on Alina's skirt. Mama, who was that man? Alina knelt down to her son's level. Someone from a long time ago, sweetheart. Someone who does not matter anymore. He made you sad, Rose observed with a child's uncanny perception. Only for a moment, Alina assured her daughter, pulling both children into a hug. But I am happy now. I have Papa and you too and this beautiful home. I have everything I could ever want. That night, after the children were asleep, Alina and Ryder sat on the porch as they often did, watching the stars come out. Alina was quiet, processing the events of the day. I have been thinking, she finally said, about how different my life could have been if you had not walked into that trading post that day, if you had not given me a choice. But I did, Ryder said simply. You did more than that. You gave me my freedom and then you gave me time. You never pressured me, never made me feel obligated. You let me choose you because I wanted to, not because I had to. That is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. You gave me a gift too, Ryder said. You chose me when you could have chosen to leave, to go anywhere, do anything. You had money saved, opportunities, but you stayed. You chose this life, chose me. That is something I will treasure every day of my life. Alina leaned her head on his shoulder. I would choose you again, every single time. And I would choose you, he replied, every single time. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and challenges. The ranch prospered, growing to over 500 head of cattle. Ryder took on a partner to help manage the expanded operations, a young man named Daniel who reminded Alina of Ryder when she had first met him. Honest, hardworking, and kind. Samuel grew into a capable young man, learning the ranching business from his father. Rose showed a talent for healing, often helping Mrs. Chen with herbal remedies and tending to sick animals. Mrs. Chen eventually passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 78, surrounded by the family she had chosen. Her loss was deeply felt by everyone on the ranch, but especially by Alina, who had lost a mentor, a friend, and a mother figure. They buried her on a hill overlooking the valley where she could watch over them forever. More children came. Another son, James, and then twin girls, Sarah and Anne, named for Aliner's mother and grandmother. The house expanded again to accommodate the growing family, sprawling across the hillside like Ryder had always planned. It was full of life and laughter and love. Aliner never forgot where she had come from. She became known in the community for helping women in difficult situations, offering employment, advice, and sometimes just a safe place to stay. She and Ryder set up a fund to help women escape bad situations, providing them with enough money to start fresh. It was their way of paying forward the kindness that had changed Aliner's life. Samuel married at 24 to a schoolteacher named Margaret. Rose fell in love with a young doctor who set up practice in Colombia. James took over more of the ranch operations as Ryder grew older, showing the same competence and fairness his father had always demonstrated. The twins were still at home, finishing their education and deciding on their futures. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Ryder and Aliner took a trip back to Colombia, to the trading post where they had first met. It was under new ownership now, Jenkins having retired years ago. They stood in the dusty building, now stocked with modern goods undreamed of in 1872. "Right there," Aliner said, pointing to a spot near the counter. "That is where I was standing when you walked in." "I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen," Ryder said. "Even terrified and desperate, you had this dignity about you, this strength. I knew I had to help you." "Did you know then that you would fall in love with me?" "I suspected," he admitted with a grin. "But I was prepared to let you go if that was what you wanted. That was the hardest part, Aliner, offering you true freedom when I wanted nothing more than to keep you close." "That is why I stayed," Aliner said, taking his hand. They both wore the same wedding rings from 25 years ago, the gold worn smooth by time but still solid. "Because you let me go. Because you gave me a choice." "I have made a lot of choices in my life, Ryder, but choosing you was the best one I ever made." They walked out of the trading post hand in hand, a couple in their late 40s now, their hair touched with gray, their faces lined with years of laughter and hard work. But when they looked at each other, they saw the same people who had fallen in love on a ranch in the foothills, the same connection that had drawn them together from the start. On the ride back to the ranch, Aliner thought about the girl she had been, desperate and afraid, being traded like property. She thought about the man who had given her freedom and then waited patiently for her to choose him. She thought about the life they had built together, the children they had raised, the love that had only grown stronger with time. "What are you thinking about?" Ryder asked, noticing her smile. "I am thinking about how grateful I am," she said. "For every moment, every choice, every day that brought me to you." "Even the hard parts?" he asked. "Even the hard parts," she confirmed. "Because they led me here, to you, to our family, to this life. I would not change a single thing." As they crested the rise and the ranch spread out below them, green and prosperous in the summer sun, Aliner felt a deep sense of peace. This was home. This was family. This was the life she had chosen, and it was better than anything she could have imagined that day in the trading post. Their children were waiting when they arrived, having gathered for the anniversary celebration. Samuel and Margaret with their 3 children, Rose and her husband with their 2, James with his new fiancée, the twins, Sarah and Anne, helping to set up tables in the yard for the feast. Neighbors and friends were arriving, just as they had for the wedding 25 years ago. But this time, Aliner was not a frightened bride hoping for happiness. She was a woman who had found it, had built it with her own hands and her own choices. She was a woman who had been offered freedom and had chosen love. She was a woman who had taken the gift of a second chance and made it into a lifetime of joy. As the sun set over the valley that night, casting everything in gold, Alina and Ryder danced together in the yard, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, their friends and neighbors. The fiddler played the same song that had been played at their wedding, and they moved together with the ease of long practice. Two people who had become one through years of choosing each other, day after day. "I love you," Alina whispered as they swayed together. "I love you too," Ryder replied, "my brave, beautiful wife. The woman who chose freedom and then chose me." "The man who gave me freedom and then gave me love," Alina replied. "Thank you, Ryder, for everything, for that day in the trading post, for offering me a choice, for waiting for me, for loving me. Thank you for saying yes," he said, "for staying, for building this life with me, for being the answer to prayers I did not even know to pray." They held each other close as the music swelled and the stars came out. Two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and had created something beautiful and lasting. The ranch that Ryder had built alone was now a legacy they would pass on to their children, a testament to what could be accomplished when two people truly chose each other. Years continued to pass, bringing more grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren before the end. Ryder passed first at the age of 83, surrounded by his large and loving family. He died peacefully in the bed he had shared with Alina for over 50 years, holding her hand as he had held it on their wedding day. Alina lived another 5 years after Ryder's death, spending her time with her children and grandchildren, tending her garden, and watching the ranch continue to thrive under James's capable management. She remained sharp and active until the very end, still helping women in need, still sharing the story of how a cowboy had given her freedom, and she had chosen him anyway. On her final day, surrounded by 3 generations of the family she and Ryder had created, Alina closed her eyes and thought about that July day in 1872, when her life had changed forever. She thought about the man who had walked into a trading post and refused to let injustice stand. She thought about every choice she had made since then, every moment of joy and sorrow, every sunrise and sunset shared with the love of her life. "Thank you, Ryder," she whispered to the empty air, knowing somehow that he could hear her. "For everything. I will be with you soon." And then Alina Rose Harper Turner, who had once been traded for a wagon but had refused to be owned, who had been given freedom and had chosen love, who had built a life of purpose and joy from the ashes of desperation, closed her eyes for the last time. She died with a smile on her face, secure in the knowledge that she had lived well, loved deeply, and left the world better than she had found it. The ranch continued for generations after, passed down through the Turner family. And every child born into that family learned the story of their great-great-grandmother Alina, who had been offered as payment for a wagon, but had been saved by their great-great-grandfather Ryder, who gave her freedom. They learned about how she chose him not because she had to, but because she wanted to. They learned that love is always a choice, and that true love respects freedom rather than demanding surrender. The story of Alina and Ryder became a legend in those California foothills, told and retold until it took on the quality of myth. But unlike most legends, this one was true. It was a story of courage and kindness, of freedom and choice, of a love that began with respect and grew into something that lasted beyond death itself. It was a story that reminded everyone who heard it that the darkest moments can lead to the brightest futures, that one person's kindness can change the course of another's entire life, and that choosing to love someone freely is the greatest gift any person can give or receive. And so the story ends not with death, but with legacy. With children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who grew up knowing they came from love, from a choice freely made, from two people who found each other in the Wild West and built something that would last forever. The ranch stood as a testament to what Ryder and Alina had built together, not just with lumber and land, but with love and choice and mutual respect. It was a happy ending, a closed chapter, a story complete. Alina Harper had been traded for a wagon. Ryder Turner had given her freedom. And she had chosen him anyway, not once but every day for over 50 years. That choice, made freely and renewed constantly, had been the foundation of everything that came after. It was the best choice she ever made, and it had made all the difference.